Good evening, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog today for Monday, November 24th, 2014, around 5:22 p.m. in Billerica, Massachusetts. It was a warm day today, highs around 68. Got some rain, got some sunshine and stuff like that. And tomorrow's going to be 58, and Wednesday's going to be a major snowstorm in this neck of the woods. Some news to report, sad news to report in the world of the NHL. Longtime NHL defenseman and head coach Pat Quinn passed away at the age of 71 due to a long illness. And also, the Red Sox are on the verge of signing third baseman Pavel Sandoval to a 5-year, $100 million contract. And also the 2015 Major League Baseball Hall of Fame ballot has been released. And on the names are the top candidates for this year: Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, John Smoltz, Nomar Garcia-Pera, Gary Sheffield, and a few others. And that's about it on that. My next subject is going to be a two-parter. This one is going to be about starrcade, which was a NWA/WCW pay-per-view super card that started 31 years ago today in the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. The background on starrcade was a super show that was on Thanksgiving night in the Coliseum in Greensboro. It was the big card to have the major feuds of the Jim Crockett promotion Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling end at starrcade. And starrcade was the first major supercard that a professional wrestling organization had in North America. There was others that were kind of mini supercards, like WWE had a couple at Shea Stadium in 1972, 76, and 80. They had a couple at the Superdome, promoted by Mid-South Wrestling. There was a few in Florida, promoted by Championship Wrestling from Florida. But starrcade 83 was the first major supercard in North America to be promoted as a supercard. And most of the names on starrcade 83 were like wrestlers from Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, and some were from Championship Wrestling from Florida. And calling the matches were Gordon Soley and Bob Cotto. And starrcade 83 was broadcast in several arenas that Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling had at closed circuit locations to show the one at Greensboro, North Carolina. The first starrcade was nicknamed the Flair for the Gold, and the main event was Ric Flair beating 7-time NWA World Champion Harley Race in a steel cage match to win the NWA title for the second time. Also, some of the other top matches were Jay Youngblood and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat beating the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry with Angela Moscasina as the referee for the NWA World Tag Team Championships. Also, a dog collar match between Greg the Hammer Valentine and Rowdy Piper. Piper won this dog collar match. Valentine was the U.S. champion at the time, but the title was not on the line on dog collar match. And also other matches were Carlos Colon against Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah the Butcher won because of outside interference from Hugo Severa. And another one was a couple of others matches, but those happened, but those were the main ones. And it was a very successful starrcade 83. It was the best supercard of all time up to that point in professional wrestling history. Next year they had starrcade 84, which was the $1 million challenge between NWA World Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, and they had a special referee. The special referee was Smokin' Joe Frazier, former boxing heavyweight champion of the world. Flair won this match in about 13 minutes due to excessive blood, and he won the $1 million storyline-wise. And starrcade 84 was also called by Gordon Soley and Bob Cotto, but Starrcade 84 after Flair versus Rhodes was kind of a disappointing card. They had Ricky Steamboat challenge Tully Blanchard for the NWA TV Championship. That was a pretty good match, but the rest of the undercard was disappointing. Some of the matches were Wahoo McDaniel, U.S. champion, who was a heel face defending the U.S. title against it. Superstar Billy Graham, another heel, and Superstar had to play the de facto face. And that was a horrible match, and there was other matches on there. Starrcade 84 was very disappointing, and I think that was just a one-match show. But with the success of Starrcade in 1985, Jim Crockett Promotions decided to have Starrcade at both Greensboro, North Carolina, and the Omni in Atlanta, and it was called The Gathering. And the main event for this was the American Dream Dusty Rhodes wrestling Nature Boy Ric Flair for the NWA World title again at the Omni Atlanta, and this was to culminate the feud after like the Andersons and Ric Flair attacked Dusty Rhodes and broke his leg after Dusty Rhodes saved Ric Flair from the call-offs in his cage match. In this match, Dusty Rhodes won the NWA World Championship over Ric Flair. They thought he won it, but the referee was knocked out, and another referee came in and Dusty pinned Ric Flair 1, 2, 3, and everybody was so happy. Everybody was celebrating. The face wrestlers came down and celebrated, and people thought Dusty was the new NWA World Champion, but the next week on television, they had to reverse the decision because the original referee was knocked out and he disqualified Flair, and a title can't change hands on a disqualification. That's kind of a Dusty finisher, named after Dusty Rhodes, who was the booker for Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And also, another match was pretty good, was the I Quit match between Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard for the U.S. title. It was one of the most classic matches of all time for a steel cage match. And a couple of other ones were like the Andersons, Ole and On defending the NWA National Tag Team Championship against Wahoo McDaniel and Billy Jack Haynes. And for the NWA World Tag Team Championships, the Rock and Roll Express wrestled Ivan and Nikita Koloff. The Rock and Roll Express won back the NWA World Championships. And it was a pretty good card. Calling out those matches were like Tony Schiavone and Bob Cotto, and they also had closed circuit television at other locations where Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling was being produced and aired. In 1986, they had Starrcade 86, the Night of the Skyrockers. They did it again in Greensboro, North Carolina, the Omni in Atlanta, and the main event was Nature Boy Ric Flair defending the NWA World Championship against Nikita Koloff. It was supposed to be Magnum TA against Ric Flair for the NWA World Championship, but Magnum TA got into a car accident several weeks before this match was going to happen. His career was ended, so they had to turn Nikita Koloff, who was a heel and Magnum TA's biggest rival, a face. And this should have culminated that somehow Nikita Koloff won the NWA World Championship, beating Ric Flair. Nikita was the NWA US champion at the time, but they went with a double disqualification. It would have been nice if Nikita Koloff won the NWA World Championship. He could have dedicated to Magnum TA, but that would have probably been a short-lived reign, and he would have gave it back to Flair. But a double disqualification was kind of a cop-out. And another match they had was the scaffold match between Midnight Express and the Road Warriors, which was very awesome. Legend had it, like Road Warrior Hawk had wrestled with it on a broken ankle, and he did amazing on it. The bumps in this scaffold match were amazing and stuff like that. And Road Warriors won, and then they chased Jim Cornette up to the scaffold, and he took a big bump which blew out both his knees. That was pretty great. And it was another great match on there. First blood match between the NWA Television Championship, Dusty Rhodes against Tully Blanchard. Tully Blanchard won the NWA TV Championship by having Dusty bleed, and also they had the Rock and Roll Express defend the NWA World Tag Team Championship against Ole and On. Pretty solid card for Starrcade 86. the Night of the Skywalkers, and they were doing good for the business for Starrcade. But in 1987, Starrcade had to change locations because Jim Crockett said that he was getting the NWA on pay-per-view, and he says to be a national company, they have to travel outside of the Carolinas and Atlanta. David Crockett, his brother, says keep it in Atlanta or Greensboro because that's where we're making a lot of money at. But Jim Crockett Jr. says we're national. We need to go to Chicago for this pay-per-view. But the problem was for pay-per-view on Thanksgiving, the WWE booked Thanksgiving for a pay-per-view for Survivor Series, the first Survivor Series. Many cable companies couldn't decide which one to choose, but Vince McMahon gave an ultimatum. If you don't carry the Survivor Series pay-per-view, you ain't carrying WrestleMania 4. And the WWE had a track record in pay-per-view because they had produced several pay-per-view events before. The Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA produced 0. And many cable companies chose the WWE bet Survivor Series. Then Starrcade 1987 Chi-Town Heat, which was at the UIC Pavilion. Only a handful of cable companies carried Starrcade 1987 in it. And it was at Chicago, and it was called Chi-Town Heat. And the main event was Nature Boy Ric Flair wrestling Ronnie Garvin for the NWA World Championship in a side of steel cage. Even though Garvin was the face, the fans were cheering Ric Flair, and who was the heel, and he won the NWA Championship again for the 5th time. And also, they had another cage match, which was the American Dream Dusty Rhodes against Lex Luger for the U.S. title, which was a great cage match. And another one was the Road Warriors against Arn Anderson and Tully Branson for the NWA World Tag Team Championship. Another dusty finisher for that title match, which was pretty poor. And another scaffold match for Starrcade 87 between the Rock and Roll Express against the Midnight Express. This wasn't a great scaffold match. It couldn't compare to the one in 1996 between the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors, and the rest of the card was kind of filler at best. And Starrcade 87 lost millions upon millions of dollars for Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA because they were expecting big money for the pay-per-view revenues, but they got very little of it, and that kind of almost caused them to go bankrupt, and they had to sell it to Ted Turner and and they rebranded it World Championship Wrestling, but that rebranded of World Championship Wrestling would take over time. And also they decided that the next Starrcade 1988 Starrcade would not be on Thanksgiving night anymore. They moved it to December. And this one for Starrcade 88 True Grit, they held it the pay-per-view Monday, December 26th, the day after Christmas at the Norfolk Scope, which was a good location because the NWA promoted in the Norfolk Scope. It was their territory, but having it the day after Christmas was bad because people was enjoying spending time with the holiday and stuff like that. And also the main event was Nature Boy Ric Flair defending the NWA World Championship against the Total Package Lex Luger, which was the main event at Great American Bash 1988. And the Luger and Flair feud was old, and plus in addition, people were actually booing Lex Luger, even though he was a face, and they were cheering Ric Flair, who was a heel. Ric Flair won the match and retained the NWA World Championship, and they said it was the last time Luger was going to get a title shot at the NWA World Championship. But he got a title shot anyway 6 months later. And also, they had another match was the Road Warriors, who were turned heel, who were NWA World Tag Team Champions, faced off against Sting and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes for the NWA World Tag Team Championships. Sting and Dusty won by disqualification with interference by Paul Ellering, the Road Warriors manager. Sting and Dusty Rhodes were booed completely out of the building, even though they were faces, because the people did not buy the Road Warriors as heels. They never bought them as heels. 6 months later, they're back faces. And the rest of the undercard for Starrcade 88 was poor, very poor. They had Ivan Koloff and the Junkyard Dog, or nicknamed Junk Food Dog, against the Russian Assassins for the masks for the Russian Assassins. The Assassins won that match pretty easily. And also the other one that was a little bit significant. Rick Steiner, the Dogflakes Gremlin, beat Mike Rotundo for the NWA World TV Championship. Rick Steiner broke away from the Varsity Club and turned face, and he beat Mike Rotundo for the NWA TV Championship, but the rest of the card was pretty poor and stuff like that, and a lot of people were saying Starrcade was becoming a damaged wrestling brand for pay-per-view because of all the changes and stuff. But in 1989, they changed the format again. Usually Starrcade should have been where all the major feuds culminated, because it's supposedly the biggest card of NWA's year. They decided to have a kind of a tournament, an Iron Man tournament and an Iron Team tournament. The Iron Man tournament, they had Ric Flair, Great Muta, Lex Luger, and Sting, 4 of the top NWA singles wrestlers, and they had 4 of the top NWA tag teams, the Road Warriors, the Steiner Brothers, Doom, and the Samoan SWAT team. It was really going to be Skyscrapers with Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey, but Sid Vicious suffered an injury, so the Skyscrapers were out and the Samoan SWAT team were in. They called this Future Shock, the Iron Team Tournament, and it was the Iron Man and Team Tournament. It was held at the Omni Atlanta home base of WCW. They still called it NWA then. And the Iron Team Tournament and the Iron Man Tournament at Starrcade was not good. Why would you have an Iron Man and an Iron Team tournament at the biggest pay-per-view for a company like NWA? It made no sense. The winner of the Iron Team tournament was the Road Warriors. This was the biggest, that was probably the last significant big win they had in the NWA before they left for WWE in June of 1990. And the Iron Man was Sting. He beat Ric Flair in the last match of the night, and they had Ole Anderson and Arn Anderson come up. They were going to try. People thought they were going to attack Sting, but they raised their hand for the Four Horsemen, and a few weeks later, Sting joined the Four Horsemen, and then they turned on him in the Clash of Champions 1990 February, and that's about it. And that's about it for Starrcade from 1983 through 1989, the NWA years. And the next video blog I'm going to discuss about from 1990 to 2000, the WCW Starrcade, which it goes downhill and goes up again and downhill. See you later, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. Bye now.